Higurashi When They Cry has been a series that I have always loved. Way since back when I watched the series 15 years ago, there was just something about this kind of repeating story that just captivated me. Yes, it was very edgy, very dark, very shocking, but there was more to it than that. And I definitely was excited for the Higurashi When They Cry Go series when it first was airing. Thought of this show that is supposedly supposed to be a remaking of it, but in actuality, the writer was actually going for this idea of having something even for the returning fans. It was something that I was definitely interested in, but I actually went back and to rewatch the entirety of the old series just so I can see what kind of differences we'd end up seeing with this particular series. But this is my review of the series. I'm going to start with a full-on spoiler-free review for those that have not watched the series before I get into my spoiler thoughts of the series. So with that said, let's jump into it. For those unfamiliar with the Higurashi series, it takes place back in 1983 in the Hinamizawa village. And this village specifically is going through some type of weird occurrence where really quickly we find out that it seems like something really terrible happens, and it almost seems as if things repeat themselves. And this kind of cycle that is surrounding this village is the mystery that is in the original series. Essentially, you would kind of open up, seeing all these friends that are part of this one school. They're all taking part of club activities, having a lot of fun. And at some point, it seems like somebody ends up going off the deep end and a rash of murders start to begin. And as we get into the Higurashi When They Cry Go series, this is revealed very quickly as being something surrounding a girl named Rika, who is the latest daughter of this one particular family. And this is a family that is kind of the priestess family of this particular village surrounding this Oyashira god that pretty much protects the village itself. And a lot of the emphasis on this story really does kind of center around the idea of everything kind of being origined around this war that happened between these villagers and the government around them creating a dam in this particular village that would eventually flood it, and they would have to be moved to another location. And there's a lot of belief around the idea that the Oyashiro god himself is kind of this being that will curse those that either leave the village or come in to threaten the village itself. And so a lot of the story really kind of centered around how are they going to be able to kind of figure out how to get out of this continuous cycle that all seems to be surrounding this Rika girl. And it's in that element that I've always really enjoyed the Higurashi series, even the original series and onto this new series. And what I did find is that there is a lot of retelling of a lot of the stories from the original Higurashi When They Cry. This is technically a new telling, and what they did actually do with this particular adaptation was kind of adjust the stories just a little bit. And you don't really find out until later why that adjustment really happens. So it's almost one of those things where the writer themselves is trying to keep it fresh for the returning fans, but there's also a reason in the story for that adjustment. And I did find that aspect really interesting. That being said, at the same time, I did find myself a little bit let down as to what that particular reason was. I was fascinated by that shift, but at the same time, the motivations were a little bit lackluster for me, in my opinion. But even still, piecing together that puzzle that the writer ends up creating has always been the enjoyment that I've had in this series. And I'm actually fascinated by the fact that even though this writer manages to tell a story with multiple resets, but also multiple perspectives and multiple timelines, even in the end, I'm able to piece it together. This is kind of one of those things where it's so fragmented. The story itself is so fragmented, but yet you're still able to kind of piece together, oh, well, because of this occurrence, it's probably back here where this story actually happened. And like I said, even having it so fragmented, it's still very cohesive, which is very, very interesting in my perspective. When there's a lot of shows that I've watched where they try to jump around in the timelines and you get lost really quickly, Higurashi has always been a series that I've always felt the writer knows how to keep you in line with what's going on. And even if it's not completely obvious, it's still something that you can kind of figure out in some way. It's still something you can still follow because you have these basic understandings of what happens in certain timelines. And like I said, I do give them a lot of credit for being able to pull that off. Visually, the series looks great. Passione did a great job. I think the original series being done by Studio Dean, they did a good job at that particular time, but I think Passione definitely took this and gave it a lot of polish to the characters and look. Not only that, but it's actually the character designs themselves are being done by Akio Watanabe, who of course is known for doing the Bakemonogatari series as well as the Furugasaya. So definitely a great character designer as well. I think Passione did a pretty good job of actually pulling off the artwork for the characters themselves. There's times where it kind of falls, but most of the time it did look really good. It was kind of funny to see that they, based on the idea of Akio Watanabe being the character designer, but even though Passione being the studio that was working on it, they still had a lot of Shaft elements in there with the certain head tilts and everything like that kind of thrown in there. The intro is very Bakemonogatari looking. But yeah, overall, it visually looked really good. They pulled it off really well. It was kind of weird early on because it seemed like they were censoring some of the violence in the show, which, by the way, this show is extremely, extremely violent, very gory, very torturous, so keep that in mind. It was odd that they were actually censoring a lot of the violence early on, but later on it seemed like they were showing everything. So I wasn't sure if it was maybe I somehow caught a censored version and not a censored version. They were all on the same site, so it doesn't make any sense for Funimation to have one episode censored and the rest not. Just very, very odd choice there. But yeah, they do show everything. Keep that in mind. This show is extremely horrifically violent. I was joking to my brother the other day about the fact that I've always laughed about the fact that the fingernail peeling scene in the first series was probably the most unsettling of all the violent stuff that happens, and yet somehow they managed to they outdid themselves with this particular season with a particular unsettling raking scene. I'll just say that. So it just comes down to my thoughts on overall suggesting this show. I think for people that have never watched Higurashi When They Cry, yes, you can jump straight into the series. It is unfortunate, though, that you will essentially get reveals of certain things way earlier than you would with the original series. I mean, if you want the full-blown experience of Higurashi, I definitely suggest watching the original series, Higurashi When They Cry, Higurashi Kai, Higurashi Rei, because it does technically enhance what the characters are going through with this particular season. Yes, this is technically a sequel. It is designed that you don't have to watch the original series. You do get refreshers and full explanations, but certain things aren't explained as well in this one. Specifically, there's a character that has a lot to do with the original story, and that character gets a full-on backstory that, yes, you get a little glimpse of in this series, but not the whole story. So it just depends on how much you want to invest. If you have the time, yes, go watch the original series. If you don't have the time and you still want to get into the series, I can't say that you can't watch Go. It is designed so that you can jump into the series. So I leave it up to you, but it definitely was really cool to see the differences and what all shifts in the story going in the series. And like I said, the original series is a series that I absolutely beloved and can never go wrong with suggesting. But my thoughts on the Go specifically, if you were like an old-time fan, I do definitely see a lot of benefits to watching the series so far. I'm liking the direction it's taking. I only have one problem, and I'm hoping that it gets better with the second season, Satsu, and that is surrounding a certain character that is essentially the main reason why this entire season is happening, which they do get into eventually. And the motivations behind that character gives me a lot of pause. And I'll get into that more in the spoiler segment for those that have watched the series. But it's kind of one of those things where I think I'm going to have to watch Satsu before I really do get an idea if that's going to be a problem. But I do love coming back on this show. I do love seeing these new twists and turns they're taking. And I cannot wait for more of it. So that's my non-spoiler discussion of Higurashi When They Cry Go. So beyond this point, I'm going to start getting into spoilers and really kind of dive into my thoughts of the series as a whole. Early on, what I want to get into is my soft spoiler segment of things. So if you're okay with kind of getting an idea of, if you've watched the original series and you want to know when things will finally kind of shift for you, because I think that is a really good question. If you have watched the original Higurashi, Kai, and Rei, one question that you might have is, well, it seems like we're watching the same story. Like, when is it? Yes, there's shifts in how they change how each things conclude, but it is technically retelling a lot of things. So some people might want to know, like, when does it really shift? Like, when am I going to expect to actually see things new? And that's where, again, soft spoilers here, episode 14 is really where you get an addition to a new element. It's very minor. It seems very minor, but you are getting a new element added. So if you are looking to jump, I would not go past 14. 14 is when you're going to get the addition of some new element. And specifically, 16 is where things just hit the fan. So 14 and 16, that's where you're really getting a huge shift in the actual narrative to something new. And that's all I'll say for the soft spoilers. Beyond here, I'm going to get into full discussion of really all of my thoughts on the show as a whole. So yeah, your last chance, full-on spoilers beyond this point for Higurashi, go. Not Satsu. I have not touched Satsu yet. I'm looking to get this recorded so I can go watch Satsu. But yeah, full-on spoilers. So yeah, like I said, my main reason for going and watching the original series is to really kind of see new shifts in the story that were really interesting. And what was funny, what I found is that everything that I was going, oh, hey, that's different. Oh, hey, that's different. Oh, hey, that's different. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't necessarily that the writer was making it fresh for people like me that have watched the original series, especially watched the original series this recently. But really, it was one of those things where you realize at some point, oh, it was the writer changing it to make it fresh, but it was all because of Sadako. Damn it, I hate Sadako. It was funny because one of the things that I reminded myself watching the original series, and I said it in my rewatch video as well, was that I did find Sadako really annoying. Yeah, I do understand Sadako. My heart breaks for Sadako. She's been through so much crap. But at the same time, it's one of those things where she does get really annoying. And for the show to hear me say that and literally make the entire sequel series about Sadako being annoying, that's where I'm getting frustrated, and that's where I'm like, we're really making an entire new series and rewriting not really rewriting characters, but rewriting everything and restarting this whole situation because Sadako was being whiny. Sadako could have done that a long time ago. I understand Sadako, and we'll get more into that in a minute. But yeah, it's funny to realize that, okay, with like the first reset, we see Keiichi kind of getting paranoid again. And so it's like, okay, here's the bat scene again. And then at some point, Rika comes up and says, you need to trust your friends. Rena is not after you. And what happens? Rena comes after him, and Keiichi doesn't bash them in. Again, we don't know why Rena at the time does it, but now we do. Jumping all the way into the very end of Go, we do find out that Sadako gets the syringe that basically is the serum that will make them more likely to progress in the syndromes. So the assumption is that in the first reset, Rena got injected by this, went crazy, and killed Keiichi. So there we go. Again, second reset, we go into Mion's story. So we're thinking, okay, we're going to get into the whole thing where Shion, takes over the entire place and kills everybody. And no, it's, again, she gets the doll. Seems like everything's fine. At some point, Rika disappears. Rika kind of has like this weird outburst, but then Rika disappears. Mion seemingly goes crazy on him with the ladder again, but then Mion takes him home and hides him in a cage because he went into the shed and tries to protect him there. And the assumption is that at that point, they got injected, went crazy. Third one seems to get more into, again, Sadako's story, but in this particular one, they win the game, have a barbecue, which was different. They have this whole situation where Sadako is, cooking for Keiichi, so you have this nice little thing happening. The uncle comes back. They skip straight forward into the later season of Higurashi, the original series, where they get into the whole banding together the village and fighting against this child protective services. And even though they get the happy end there, Sadako is saved from the uncle. The twist is that it seems like Sadako wants him to become his new Nini, takes him back to Satoshi's room, and that's where the uncle's waiting, and they have a little bout, and they fight, and then apparently Oishi shows up at the festival and kills everybody. So again, the assumption is that Oishi was injected, killed everybody. And that's when everything gets crazy, because that's when, obviously, Hanyu bestows upon Rika her power to remember things. And she also tells her about this particular sword that is in the shrine, or in the shed with the statue, that can kill a looper. And again, the assumption that right immediately there is, okay, well, this is her out. If you want to stop resetting, you can kill yourself with this sword. It isn't until later on we find out, no, it's It's for somebody else. It's not for you, Rika. This is where we get this moment where she goes, I'm going to take 5 more chances. If I don't get to a happy end in 5 more chances, I'll use this on myself. And that's when we get like this really quick, and I kind of found this dumb, but it was like a really quick shoot through 5 different scenarios with 5 different people going crazy. We even had Mion's mom went crazy. We had the village chief went crazy. Even poor Akasaka actually went crazy, which I thought that was really crappy. Yeah, everybody pretty much that has not been crazy before has now gone crazy and killed Rika. Again, all seemingly done by this injection. They all seem to have this elevated levels of the disease itself, which again, I'm assuming at that point was still was Sadako was doing all of that, because we now find at this last moment, the final moment is Rika wakes up and she is literally already in trouble. The world that she is in is already screwed up, and that's because Sadako is there, basically already opened up her entire stomach and is performing the whole cleansing ritual upon her. She's doing the old ritual with the hoe, gutting her, taking out her intestines, and screaming about the fact that she has betrayed the city. And that was the whole reason. She says that Sadako at this time is claiming that she has been seen by Oyashiro, and she's there to basically perform this to cleanse her of her sins. She is going to perform this on her, and she's upset about this. It's a weird moment because essentially it's her best friend, Rika's best friend, the only one that she, has been through so much together, is literally crying, saying that she betrayed her and leaving. And we've found out at this point that, yes, back in the original series, when they finally successfully beat the curse, they stopped Takano. We also found out later on that apparently the disease itself has been cured. Irie has figured out a cure for it. Her and Sadako end up going to a school, which was apparently Shion's prestigious school of fine women. They went there and apparently they were happy. And it was weird because she at some point claimed, or at least Rika claims, that they reset from this point, which was 10 years later. She wished that she can go back 10 years, back to the future 10 years, where she was happy in the dorm. Later on, it seems like it was only 5 years, based on Sadako's story. I'm not sure if that'll come into play sometime later, but that's the claim at that point. Rika claims that she wants to go back 10 years when she was in the school. So she had left the village. And she feels like this is where she's being told, because you left, because you ditched this place that loved you, it's the god here basically punishing you. This was your sin. And so it's almost like this point in which Rika kind of accepts, I do love this place. I don't actually hate it. I don't actually want to leave, even though my mindset may have been that this village was a cause of 100 years of anguish. I really don't want to leave. And it's like is this Stockholm syndrome? Like she's got to accept that you have to be here in pain. It's like very, very sad at this point. But yeah, when she finally dies and wakes up again after this very long segment of her intestines being pulled everywhere and her body being cut in half, like I said before, this was literally wow, you guys outdid the fingernail thing. This is very unsettling. Just like it kept going on. But yeah, it kind of resets again, and she's on the riverside with everybody, and she goes to Sadako and says, I'm sorry, I actually really want to, I love this village and everything. I want to be with y'all forever. And then at some point, they have a birthday party for Sadako, and yeah, she dodges the springing punching trap, and she's like, how did you remember that? Which, it was weird. Like, why do we come to Rika comes to a quick conclusion here. Because Sadako dodged this trap that is now a box for a bear, that she remembers something, and oh yeah, by the way, this whole kill the looper thing, oh, it's Sadako. Again, I'm not sure why it came to that conclusion there, because we've seen plenty of times where people remember things and she's never gone, oh, you're the looper, you have to die. But anyways, that's how they figured that out. And yeah, Sadako's eyes go red and she pulls out a gun. So that's when we get the realization, okay, so this is Sadako's world. This is Sadako's resetting that's happening here. And that's when we get the whole explanation of, yes, they went to school together at some point. Really quickly when they arrive at this school, Rika gets picked up by all the most popular girls. She's very refined. She's able to kind of jump into this life of being refined and a good student. But not only that, and she's feeling left out at this point, Sadako's feeling left at this point, but she's also getting angry because, she can't keep up in her studies. She's not good at study. She doesn't like studying, and she feels like Rika leaves her behind. Even though Rika offers to help her plenty of times, she feels left out, and so she gets really angry. And at some point, they go back to this reunion back at the village, and Sadako goes inside the shed, finds this horn that ends up awakening this goddess, some kind of being that ends up bestowing upon her the power to reset. And so Sadako uses this to essentially reset time, trying to break Rika. At some point, she's able to see the 100 years that Rika went through, because she's like, why won't she break? And this lady's like, because she's been through this for 100 years. She has the resolve to want to leave. And Sadako's trying to break that. And so it's turning into a game where Sadako will never, she's so, I guess they're trying to push that her determination is, that she loves Rika. She doesn't want to be separated from Rika. She wants to go back to the village because that's when they had fun. They didn't have to worry about studying all the time. This new world is something that she doesn't want to be a part of. But now she's kind of realized that what Rika's gone through, but still dead set on the idea of breaking Rika from wanting to leave the village. And again, that's where I'm struggling with if I'm okay with this story or not, is because it doesn't make sense to me that Sadako would see what Rika went through for 100 years and still be dead set on the idea of breaking her from wanting to leave. Like, that would make her understand why she wants to leave. But yet she's still dead set on it. But not only that, the idea of going through what most people would not want to do. Like, most people would be terrified from the idea of jumping in front of a truck, but she's willing to jump in front of a truck just to stop her from progressing. It's like she doesn't hesitate. Like, this isn't Sadako. It doesn't seem like it makes sense that she'd be willing to jump in front of a truck just to reset things from one conversation. So I'm struggling with Sadako's character right now, like more so than ever. But I do understand the idea of that obsession of being with Rika. Like, this is her. She loves Rika that much that she's willing to go crazy. Like, it's essentially going the yandere route. We are Sadako yandere character here. We are dead love, like deathly love going on with Sadako's character. So yeah, she's basically tried to stop her from studying. She's tried to outright say don't do it. She has tried to essentially make a promise beforehand. All of them don't seem to work at this point. But other than that, it was funny to kind of have an addition to the idea of she goes to this goddess, what she ends up calling Iua. She goes to Iua and says, people still remember things. What's that all about? She's like, well, sometimes the residual memories and stuff like that. But it's more prevalent with those that are of the same blood. And so we get a quick shot of they redeem the uncle. Somehow I feel bad for the uncle. They show the uncle like remembering his deaths, and so this kind of changes him to the point where he wants to patch things up with Sadako and be a good person. So that was weird. And not only that, but that also kind of led into them explaining Takano's story and why she ends up kind of giving herself up in the world. Because we find out in this particular telling of the story, Takano is not really about doing this anymore. It seems like she's corrected herself. She even gives herself up. And so what we find out is it seems like in her kind of experiencing and remembering things, she decides to take upon this album upon herself earlier than she normally did. There was this album that she chose not to open until she completed this work. But now she chooses to open it early, and she finds a letter from Takano basically telling her, look, don't chase after what I was going after. Please make your own life. And so that's why she pretty much gives herself up. So that was cool to kind of give an answer on that, because I didn't really want to explain it early on. You know why now, because it seems like that's caused by Sadako. That's essentially how she gets the syringe that she ends up using throughout the rest of the season. So yeah, like I said, I'm super mixed at this point. I love the new twists and turns. I love the new story. I just don't, so far right now, I'm not following Sadako very well. Like I said, I understand what they're doing with her. I just don't know that I agree that it is a good choice for a direction of character. But we'll see. We'll see going in Sotsu. I really hope that it really kind of twists things around. It could be an element of just her mind being warped based on the reset. But like I said, it was kind of, she jumped into the opportunity really quickly, and it doesn't really make, like I said, with the original series, it made sense with Takano. Like, Takano's character, while I hate her, her character made sense. I understood why she's doing what she's doing to a psychotic extent, but I understood her. I don't understand Sadako. Like, why not use one of these resets to, I don't know, manipulate the other students so that they hate Rika the moment she comes in? That would make Rika outcast so that they can become, be outcast together. Why not do a reset to blow up the school? Use a reset to become smarter and be a part of that. You've been reset so many times, you shouldn't have to study again. You have your memories. Why would she have to study again? Use those to become better at the school. There's so many options that she has to take on. Why is it always just to force Rika to stop? You have other options to do. You're willing to jump in front of a truck. Why would you not be willing to blow up a school? It's like all these options are there for her. Why not choose them over this option that is extremely, just a little bit out there? But anyways, we'll see. Like I said, I'm looking forward to Satsu. Definitely looking forward to it. My issues that I really have are around the idea that I love this series so much. I just want it to be amazing. So don't take my criticisms as that I hate the series. I'm sure people will do that. They did that with my Evangelion video, so why not? But that's my overall thoughts, spoiler discussions, everything of this series. Higurashi, when they cry, go. Oh yeah, the broccoli references I loved. I'm not sure if the visual novel has a broccoli reference in it, and that's what they're picking off on. But the moment that Keiichi asked her about the broccoli, I was like, oh my gosh, is that a reference to that quiz from Takano? And then he literally buys her a vegetable book so that she can know the color differences with broccoli and cauliflower. So mean. Don't make the correct choice again. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment. Let me know what you thought of these series so far. Try to keep your spoiler discussions under a read more tab, but that's your choice. Hopefully people know that there's going to be spoilers down there. Subscribe if you haven't already. I thank you all for watching. Support us on Patreon if you can, and y'all take care.